Should you sit for level 1 of the CFA exam? That is the question we're going to be breaking down in today's video. Cost. Cost is something you always have to think about when you're pursuing your education, right? Return on investment, especially if you're going to be going after a finance credential that's all about making money and understanding money. You want to know what is your ROI on going after that education. Well, great news is entering the CFA program is relatively cheap compared to going after a master's degree. Now, it's definitely not free. Registration costs $450 as a one-time registration fee to participate in the CFA program. The exam itself is $700 to be an early bird, or it's $1,000 if you have normal registration time. This excludes all outside test prep materials. So if you want something like a Kaplan or a Schweizer, you're going to have to pay for that as well, and those packages can easily be above $1,000. So you definitely want to factor that in. But if you're comparing it to other credentials or other education in the finance field, it's relatively cheap. So like in the world of coding, everything is free. In the world of finance, it seems like everything is really expensive to be a participant in. But the CFA program does lower that barrier to entry substantially when you compare it to some of these other alternatives. You don't have to pay for outside prep material though if you don't want to. CFA Institute provides the CFA curriculum for free when you register for the exam. There's 6 books. That is what all the exam is going to be based on. So the exam is going to be based completely on the CFA curriculum provided, albeit a very lengthy curriculum. It's about 3,000 pages, and that's where outside test prep material can sometimes be helpful for candidates because it's usually shorter, it's more summarized, it's more brief, and it kind of condenses down some of the concepts for candidates. Now, the CFA curriculum, though, is really polished and it's really well done, I think, personally. There's a lot of really great real-world examples. So if you're pursuing the CFA designation because you want really hands-on practical knowledge, then I encourage you to read the curriculum books. Now, what exactly is on the exam? The exam covers 10 different subjects, and the most important subject on the exam is actually ethics. And you say, what? Ethics? I thought this was a finance exam. Well, the CFA Institute values ethics highly, and so that is a reoccurring theme throughout each level. Now, ethics you definitely have to study. You can't just say, oh, I'm an ethical person, I'm not going to read the ethics books. You're going to get smoked because it's a lot more than just saying, hey, you're a good person. The CFA Institute provides different situations and showing, hey, these are some of the gray, murky zones that professionals have to deal with as they're navigating working in the field. So you definitely need to focus on that ethics section. Some of the hardest sections on level 1 are going to probably be the derivative section and the financial reporting and analysis section. So the derivative sections, that's basically going to be things like options. And the financial reporting and analysis, that's going to be accounting. So if you have a quantitative undergraduate degree, something like accounting or economics or finance, that's definitely going to help you in going after the CFA designation, especially level 1. There's actually more and more colleges that are now even having their undergrads structured around level 1 so you can actually be prepared to sit for level 1. Which then brings us to the idea of prestige. So if universities are structuring their curriculum around this credential, it's obviously quite prestigious, right? There's a lot of different jobs that you can get from going after the CFA charter holder. The CFA designation is one of the top investment designations recognized globally. You can go and get a job in a lot of different risk areas or a lot of different analysis areas. Some of the job titles might be something like a risk analyst, it might be an equity analyst, credit analyst. But what you're not going to see is you're not probably going to see someone become a CFA charter holder and then go into HR. So the CFA charter holder does have its limitations. Something like an MBA is much, much more broad in that scope. You can get an MBA and you're valued in pretty much any job slightly more, but you're not a specialist like you are if you're a CFA charter holder. But if you're comparing it to other finance designations, it's definitely still one of the gold stars because it is so broad scoped, even though it is an analytical credential. So there's some other credentials out there that are much narrower scoped, and if you try to get a job outside of that narrow scope, good luck. So that is one of the great upsides about the CFA charter holder. Now, you do have to think about time though. So to sit for level 1, if you're considering it, the great thing is it's a really low barrier to entry. If you're interested, you basically just sign up and then you pay the fee and go. Now, if you want to get a master's degree, you have to go through all the admissions, and it's lengthy and it's costly, and so it's pretty hard to figure out, hey, if you want to just dip your toe in the water and give it a shot, you're a lot more committed when you go for a master's program. You could fail level 1 once and just say, I'm out. Now, speaking of that, what are the pass rates? The CFA Institute published the average pass rate for level 1 for the last 10 years has been 42%. That's pretty low. Well, it actually gets worse. So for the last year, the pass rate has been in the 20s. It's been abysmally low, really bad, and there's a lot of theories about why that could be. But you have to remember, if you're going after level 1, it is the start. And so that is just what you have to get used to. The pass rates are low on these exams. But if you're dedicated and diligent, you can get your CFA charter holder if you're persistent. The timing for becoming a CFA charter holder on average is about 4 years. When you compare it to a master's degree, it's about 2 to 3 years. For me, it took about 6 years to get my CFA charter holder. If you go after a master's degree, it's a much more finite time period, and that is one of the pluses. If you're just trying to get a degree or some sort of educational credential and get out in the working world, master's might be for you. Now, the flip side to that is there's a lot of master's programs you might not be able to work if you're participating in a master's program. Most people in the CFA program, they work and then they study outside of work. So that's a trade-off as far as pursuing the CFA designation goes. Some final thoughts that I would like to wrap up about level 1 of the CFA program. Level 1 is definitely hard. Now, I would say it's probably the easiest level, though, of the 3 levels. So if you're interested in pursuing your CFA charter holder, it's a great way to dip your toe in the water and see what the experience is like. As far as overall material, expect it to be a very broad scope of knowledge. The later levels are going to get into much more deep areas of finance, and so if you just have a genuine curiosity of finance and genuine curiosity of the field, it's a great way to check it out and see what professionals are learning.